Welcome to another episode of the Chaos Theory Astrology channel on YouTube. In this episode, we'll be covering the scientific basis of astrology. During the late 1970s, many branches of science and mathematics began to discover complex patterns in seemingly random processes. It became clear that these complex patterns were similar in a variety of physical and biological systems. These discoveries became joined in the new science of chaos theory. Chaos theory is a branch of mathematics as an interdisciplinary area of scientific study that examines underlying patterns and deterministic laws of dynamical systems that are highly sensitive to initial conditions. Chaos theory has found applications in various fields, including meteorology, engineering, economics, and even pandemic crisis management due to its relevance in understanding complex systems. An important concept of chaos theory is fractals. Fractals are fractional dimensional patterns that are complex and repeat self-similar shapes across different scales. In the context of chaos theory, fractals emerge as the graphical representation of certain dynamical systems. All of nature is filled with fractal patterns and shapes, self-repeating patterns that become smaller as they bifurcate and divide into two and repeat self-similar shapes in smaller sizes, such as tree limbs, going to twigs, and then to their smaller divisions, and other systems such as the division of veins and arteries into smaller blood vessels and then into capillaries in the distribution of blood in the human body. Plants use similar arrangements in their distribution of sap. Fractals are literally everywhere in biology. And if fractal patterns are found all over the world, in the physical world as scatter dust interference patterns and radio waves, in the natural world in clouds and coastlines, in the biological world in all circulatory systems in plants and animals and other patterns, and all fractals repeat self-similar patterns, we can largely infer there may be a universal scale fractal pattern. All these are variously repeating. The M-set or mother set fractal. Benoit Mandelbrot, a famous mathematician who is fundamental to the development of chaos theory, claimed this fractal, this mother set fractal, contains all other fractals within itself. This is the fractal pattern the universe possesses as an organizing principle and could be poetically termed the fingerprint of God. As this fractal exhibits scalar symmetry, the repetition of self-similar patterns to infinitely smaller scales, its pattern reaches from the scale of the universe to all parts of the universe, and this order reaches across scales as mutual reflection of fractal grabbers, which is the basis of why astrology works. Any two systems in sync with a third system are in sync with each other. Everything we know is in sync with the fractal organizing principle of the universe itself. In astrology, the angular interrelationships of bodies and points in surrounding space relative to Earth and what happens on our world can be seen as two symbolic languages sets that are locked in sync. By observing the state of one set, you can infer the state of the other set. This means that the fractal scale of surrounding space is and must be in sync with the fractal scale of what happens on Earth, and some type of astrological correspondences must exist. Therefore, by study of the angular interrelationships of bodies and points in surrounding space, we can obtain information about what is occurring on Earth. This gives rise to a new definition of astrology. that astrology is the study of a set of mutual reflection of fractal grammars as an information tool. There are two types of systems that can be in a mutually reflective relationship. Regular systems, where the state of that system is mathematically predictable into the past and future, and irregular systems, where the state of that system is too complex to be able to calculate. The orbital positions of the bodies and points in surrounding space relative to Earth can be mathematically calculated to examine that scale system's state into the past and future. That means it's a regular system. Its mutually reflective relationship with the irregular system of the scale of our world makes astrology a very useful tool for obtaining information. The language of astrology is of angular interrelationships. All the divisions of space in astrology, like the tropical zodiac, are simply angular relationships with the intersection of the ecliptic with the celestial plane, the tropical Aries point. All astrological charts of any kind act as fractals. They repeat the same themes of the subject of the chart on increasingly smaller scales. This is called delineational coherency. The main 360-degree chart is zoomed in on by use of movable dials, most commonly the 360 dial and the 90-degree dial. The movable dials act as a magnifying glass to the traditional modern chart. They explore the smaller scale of the chart. Here we see dots on the 90 dial, which planets or points on these dots have delineational connection to the planets or points on the dial pointer. All bodies in surrounding space have associated delineations called rulerships. Many of these rulerships are shared by different bodies, so we can use a sample set of bodies to determine the most important information. One of the most effective sets of bodies and points to find astrological information are the planets and points used in Uranian astrology and Chaos Theory astrology. The planets and points used in Uranian and Chaos Theory astrology are mostly well known. We have the midheaven, the tropical Aries point, the sun, the ascendant, the moon, the node, and the vertex. That's used in modern astrology. We have the modern planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. That's also used commonly in modern astrology. And we have the addition of the Uranian planets of Cupido, Hades, Zeus, Kronos, Apollon, Admetos, Vulcanos, Poseidon. Chaos Theory astrology also uses Chiron, which is used a lot in modern astrology, and uses also Trans-Pluto and the Lahiri sidereal Aries point of sidereal astrology. That is an additional personal and event registry point. The so-called Uranian planets were discovered by Alfred Witte and Friedrich Siegeren of the German Hamburg School of Astrology in the early 20th century. Their discovery was based on Witte's extensive knowledge of astrology and astrology, and were determined by extensive chart study. At this time, the Uranian planets still have not been observed by the current level of technology of astronomical instruments that we use. However, they do work powerfully in all charts, both in the modern 360-degree format and in the dial format. It is very probable these planets are composed of accretions of dark matter around a small visible matter core, and as we become able to observe dark matter through the development of new technologies, we will be able to detect these bodies. All things that have a beginning can be considered astrological entities. Nations, organizations, businesses, clubs, people's relationships with each other, material objects, manufactured objects, living things of all types, and natural events like earthquakes, wildfires, etc., and activities of human beings like wars, revolutions, changes of all types. All these have astrological nativities. An important maxim in astrology is in the beginning of a thing is the index of its end. Fractal scalar symmetry, expressed as the repetition of self-similarity in astrological charts on increasingly smaller scales, works not only in space as the static nativity, but also in time as the entity evolves during its life. This unfolding temporal self-similarity of astrological charts, scalar symmetry expressed through time, results in the important events of the life shown in the nativity manifesting during the life simultaneous to a huge constellation of transiting solar arc directing and other factors and factor combinations that repeat the natal themes of the life. The Chaos Theory term extreme sensitivity to initial conditions is expressed in astrological charts as tiny differences having huge impacts on the indicated life experience. A great example of this is the Percy twins, born 2 minutes apart. One murdered and the other lived on a long time to marry a Rockefeller. I did an analysis of these two charts, and anyone interested in viewing this is welcome to join the Uranian and Traditional Astrology group on Facebook. The murder of one twin and not the other is shown in the details of the traditional modern chart and in the Uranian dial charts. It's a very interesting study of these two charts that several astrologers in the traditional and modern astrological discipline have taken up and shown very compellingly how the two charts differ. This comparison of the two traditional modern charts of the Percy twins appears the exact same by cursory glance. But deep study of the charts by fully educated astrologers will identify the critical differences. And the important differences in these charts is also shown strongly using the dial methods of Uranian astrology. This is the only astrological chart analysis that I'm using in this video as an example. Not only does it show the difference between these charts, but it also shows some of the powers of the dial methods. Here we see Valerie Percy's chart, and we see the midheaven, which is very important in indicating the person, their life. It is defined in Uranian astrology as the eye of the chart, what that person will experience or go through or do. It's aligned here with a cluster of formulas suggested of being murdered, that this person would experience this. Over here on Sharon Percy's chart, we see a different situation because the midheaven on her chart has moved. Now we see the midheaven and ascendant connected to, and the midpoint between the midheaven and ascendant across from the node midpoint at Metos, and that equals the Uranian formula Uranus plus Hades minus Venus, end of a connection to a relative by murder. Sharon's sun aligned with Uranus plus Hades minus Venus minus ascendant. This is a complex midpoint. Murder of a female relative. There are many complex midpoints, complex formulas, and other factors that combine on both these charts to show what happened to each person. It shows very clearly. It's repeated over and over hundreds of times, and all the details are also included in the formulas that register to the personal points that we've already discussed. Midheaven, Aries, Sun, Ascendant, Moon, Node, and Vertex. This is an extremely powerful system, and I recommend it highly to all those who are interested in the study and practice of astrology to go with their traditional studies. The previous comparison shows the inadequacy of simplistic approaches to astrological analysis, such as found in pop astrology disseminated on the internet to accurately describe our lives. The scientific community attacks sun sign astrology and other pop astrology as foolish superstition, Barnum effects, and things like that. And it's understandable because of the various flaws in their studies and the disturbing idea that there's only 12 types of people in the entire world. They're all divided into their zodiac signs. That is counterintuitive to our understanding of our lives. But authentic astrology, where each person is treated as an individual with a snowflake sort of uniqueness, along with nations, businesses, events, and things like that, cannot be so easily disproved. This video explored the links between Chaos Theory, Fractals, and astrology very briefly, but does provide a basic overview. The fusion of these subjects giving rise to a new approach, Chaos Theory astrology, will help the advancement of authentic astrology to new frontiers and reveal new and beneficial applications to help humanity. Urania's Traditional Astrology Group is an excellent group on Facebook, and if you're interested in finding out more about the subjects covered in this video, please join that group by using the link shown. Thanks so much for watching.